technology over the years has kind of been changed and adapted and developed. I think the biggest one we've seen lately is and over the last 2 decades, is a two-handed style.
People are always asking kind of what goes on in your head, right, when you're coming up with this design. What factors are changing what you're trying to do to that design to help, you know, increase the dynamics of the ball, decrease the dynamics. And we see it kind of go both directions, but especially with two-handed no-thumb players more specifically now. You only have the 2 holes in the ball, so it's a little bit harder to manipulate that shape, and that actually changes kind of where we've strategically put some of those cutaways or extrusions in order to get those holes to hit the ball. And we have a new layout program, 2LS, which uses the pin to center of grip distance to really kind of get dialed in exactly where you're going to put those 2 holes into that weight block, and we really design the weight blocks around that a lot more now.
Yeah, and I think that goes all the way back to the beginning of bowling and really the beginning of technology. I mean, we went from, you got to think, the start of bowling was a 2-finger ball. You put your middle finger and thumb in a bowling ball, and I think they were made out of, it was lignum vitae. It was a kind of a hard wood, and it progressed through time, and we went to a rubber bowling ball, and they put 3 fingers in it. And when they put 3 fingers in it, we saw that change of, like, where that dynamics of weight, if it didn't have a counterweight closer to the fingers, we put more weight in the bottom of the ball. They didn't roll as good. So, I mean, we came to technology, and you had, I mean, over time they developed an outer shell, and they put a little tiny weight block down in the bottom of the ball to try to create that offset when you put your fingers in there. And that was kind of that's just technology in general as it advanced. And then, I mean, you went through time of covers and the lacquer lanes to urethane finishes on lanes to mineral oils to super slick oils, and the whole thing through time and process is the oils have changed.
Probably the biggest change that I had in my time here, at least, was losing balance holes. So again, you lose basically every hole that you have in the bowling ball is a way to fine-tune those dynamics, right? So one that comes to mind here is Rondour, which was in the original Rubicon. So that was kind of a first of its kind mild asymmetry type design. So a very low intermediate split. And the idea with that is even when you have a symmetrical ball, after you drill it, there's some asymmetry to it, usually under 10 intermediate diff. And this was starting with a very low amount. So it kind of mimicked if you swung that PSA to the right or to the left, you could get that asymmetry into different spots, similar to if you put that balance hole in there. And we saw pretty good success with that as well.
Sure, yeah, this was one of the first ones. I just basically took a symmetric sphere and just started cutting where you're going to have finger holes somewhere in here, you're going to have a thumb hole somewhere in this area, and so you're trying to make sure that, hey, I gave you a little bit of cutaways, and it was quite a bit of success, and we built a few other shapes based off of that idea. Some with more diff, some with a little less diff. I mean, I think we took that shape and put it in Tour Dynamics as well too, to kind of give a tour look to those high rev players, because a lot of times, sometimes the high rev player doesn't benefit as much from asymmetry too. What we talked about was it gets around to its PSA really quickly. As that rev rate goes up, it happens super fast, and so that ball goes from a skid to a hook to a roll phase with a lot of real estate left to go before it hits the pocket. So I think a lot of that, what we've developed and you and I have worked on over the last couple of years, is kind of finding a balance for technology to benefit all players.
And I think that's the key in the product line as well, is creating, like you say, a balance, having those low RG, higher diff shapes that do allow for even increasing the diff even more when that player, if they need it, if they're a little bit lower rev rate, they can use our layout systems and actually get those holes into a place that's going to increase the diff for them. But you also have on the other side of it, some designs that are for more two-handed players or no-thumb players that generally don't need that extra help from that engine of the weight block itself.
And even as we make changes, and we've seen it over the years, we've made changes to cover stocks to make super covers, and then a lane oil manufacturer puts an oil out there that has a higher viscosity or has what we call non-Newtonian principles, which if you get it smooth enough into it, it'll glide across it. But if you're a little steep, it starts to roll really fast. So it makes it quite unique.
I remember when we did, actually, it was the Kegel road trip, the second one, 10 years later. And they introduced that non-Newtonian stuff. And I was sitting there watching that, and I'm like, this changes the whole game for cover stocks and weight blocks.
100%, because if it's a little steep, spins up too fast, you've got to make it get on top of it. But yet it's still got to have enough friction to read it through the middle of the pattern. So it's like it's a juggling act always of, okay, so we make advancements, they make advancements, and it's like us battling, kind of like we're battling the technology of the lane oils, and then they're going to battle the technology that we build to either break the lane oil down a little bit because ultimately bowler has to find friction. Ultimately, the ball has to slow down to hook. So it doesn't slow down to hook, it doesn't hook. So we develop cover stock technology to do that. We develop weight block technology to do that as well too. So now we're fighting a battle of technology of the player, technology of the lane oil, technology. So it's constant.
Yeah, and I like what you said there with the ball has to find friction. That was actually one of the, honestly, it sounds so simple, but it was one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from Del Ballard, actually. And he's like, man, is your ball finding friction? I was like, no. He's like, well, it's going to be pretty hard to bowl then. And what you kind of got at there is it is that marriage, and we haven't really talked about that too much, the marriage of the cover stock and the weight block design as well. Because as we know, cover stocks are getting stronger and stronger, so that's also going to influence beyond the styles of the player what we have to do with the weight block. Because we know sometimes a super strong cover looks really good with kind of a weaker weight block in there as well, and
100%.
vice versa can definitely work out.
You have a player that struggles a little bit to create ball motion, struggles a little bit to create the shape like a two-handed player. So we develop other products to marry and match into that realm of that fit within their style, and so they can still compete. Where you're a guy that slow hooks the lane, and you get a guy like Matt Martin, who's one of our Six Ways guys and one of our marketing team people. He's struggling to find his ball to slow down.
I think that's the super unique thing about bowling is even last week I was at the TAT and watching all these different styles, and you never really know what you're going to get until the player actually gets up there and throws the ball. Everybody throws it a little bit different. And matching up and changing these weight block designs over the years to try and match up to as many of those different styles as possible is really the magic of the game.
I think truly you're trying to find the DNA of that player, of what they are. I mean, because that's the magic of bowling.
Yeah, you find their speed, rev rate, tilt, rotation, all that's contributed by them through, if you change anything on their fit too, that can change a little bit too. And then finding their axis point and like I said, that really starts getting into layouts and matching up to, whether they're speed dominant, rev dominant. There's just so many different styles of player. There's so many weight block designs that you can find something that's going to match up really well.
And the neat thing is too is there's a lot of this technology that can benefit a greater style of players, from the stroker to the tweener to the cranker, all across the board. And that one ball isn't always that we can't use it for a lot of different styles of players. These layouts, the VLS and the 2LS, have allowed us to, and allowed the pro shops to understand that they can take that ball and they can tune it one way or tune it the other to match up to fit where it needs to fit in the line.
And I think that's really important because you do have, like we talked about earlier, different styles, right? So when we have a weight block that we can manipulate the design a little bit more of based on where we put the holes and everything, we're able to kind of cater that more towards the style of player. Let's say we have somebody that has maybe a little bit lower 200, 225 rev rate and throws it a little bit firm, they're naturally going to kind of be drawn towards this DNA, the super coil weight block, because it is very low RG, high diff, high intermediate. But they're also able to enhance that even further for themselves by using something like a pin up or a shorter pin buffer layout that's going to get their thumb hole to hit that wide band around that Y and the Z axis there. That increases the total diff, increases intermediate as well, which is just going to enhance that ball to hook a little bit more. But on the flip side, you might have somebody that's 525 RPMs that's looking at this
two-hander going, wait a minute.
Yeah, 53 diff, man, I'm going to have to drill this 6 inches from my axis to be able to control it enough. But you could actually go the opposite direction. You could use, kind of like we talked about earlier, a weaker layout on this stronger weight block, make those numbers drop down a little bit more into what would fit better for their style.
Sure, 100%.
Slow that ball down, and you still get a good reaction on both sides for each player.
And that's the biggest thing about us in development and design is you're trying to always create these products that fit for lots of different styles that we talked about, but also can be manipulated, and then others that we want them to maintain a certain, they're going to performance and roll, and we're going to make the pin a little stronger, a little weaker, but it's still going to give its shape and motion no matter what style of player you are.
Yeah, and I think that's really what makes this super coil weight block. I always like, because we always bounce ideas off of each other, right? And I remember when you sent me this one and was like, take a look at this. And I'm like, oh man, this is definitely one that you're going to be able to really change that intermediate and that total total differential on the based on what layout that you end up doing. And so I think that really does just show how we have such a variety of shapes to cater to the players based on, do we want this to change more or do we want this to change less, to enhance or inhibit that reaction based on the style.
And I think the big thing you mentioned before was you're trying to manipulate covers to match. And we did the original DNA with a really strong, solid cover on it. Very, very readable, controllable, very strong motion bowling ball. Something that a lot of the tour players said, hey man, it's almost like it acts a little bit symmetric to me sometimes as asymmetrical, so they could read it really well. And then now we've put the pearl cover stock on it. This now enhances that motion off the spot, so that moment where we come out of skid to hook to roll, that transition seems to be when we make it a lot quicker because of the pearlized cover stock. But I think it's a testament to Storm Products, the visions Mr. Christman saw from the very beginning, and putting players on the team like myself and you and Klemkin and Chad McLean, and there's just a lot of great people and pieces of the puzzle here, and have been here for a long time, and it's a testament to the successes we've had that will continue to work. And it's not like we just throw something at the wall. It's a lot of testing goes in before it ever gets to the public.
And that's one other thing I want to mention, that we are the Bowlers Company here, and that since I've been here in my short amount of time, I mean, everybody here basically bowls and knows what a bowler is looking for, and I think that's a big part of why Storm is so successful. So we have a variety of styles of players here, and we can get direct feedback from those players that know, they're out there, they're bowling every weekend. They know what to expect and what players are looking for, and can take that feedback in and generate it into a good product.
And we will continue that legacy moving forward. And I think the big thing and the big takeaway here is thanks for spending a little time with me today and kind of talking a little bit about kind of where we are now, where we were, and where we look to go to, because there's a lot of big things coming.
Yeah.
There's some things coming in cover stock technology that are going to make the world go, what did they do again?